There we go. All right, welcome everyone to the July meetup for the South Shore Astrology group. Today we're going to be talking about essential dignities. So pretty much how to assess the planets in your chart and their strengths and anything that you might need to work on or just kind of know about that planet. So just kind of what's going on today, we're going to talk about dignity. We're going to talk about essential versus accidental dignity, the five components of essential dignity, the current space weather, and then we're going to look at our charts and apply what we've learned about dignity to that. All right, so let's dive right in. What is dignity? So there's two types of dignity. There's essential dignity and accidental dignity. With essential dignity, that is kind of the inherent strength or weakness or the nature of that planet in the chart. So without looking at anything else going on in your chart, just does that planet have resources to be able to do what it needs to do and take care of the sign that it has responsibility towards. Essential dignity is just kind of, is that planet being thrust into the spotlight, whether it's prepared or not? Is it in the 10th house, a house that's really visible? Is it conjunct your MC or one of the other angles? Is it kind of being activated with a Time Lord or timing technique? So you can think about essential dignity as, is this planet prepared to do what it needs to do? And accidental dignity is that the planet is being thrust into a leadership role, whether it's prepared or not. So for some planets, it's like, this is the moment I've been waiting for. But for some, they're like, I don't know about this. And it's good to know that in your chart to be able to see that because say you have a planet that doesn't have a lot of essential dignity in a prominent place, you can be aware of that and then start to be like, okay, I understand why this pattern keeps coming up in my life. And you can do some maybe remediation techniques to help that planet a little bit. All right, so these are the 5 types of essential dignity, and these are in a hierarchical order. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the astrologer William Lilly, but he assigned a point value to the essential dignities. And this is kind of like a training wheels beginner way to look at these different dignities and just kind of know, okay, this one's more important than this one, and this one than this one. But eventually, as you kind of get a feeling for dignity, you can think of it more as flavors than like a cut and dry point system. But I find that really helpful when you're starting to just kind of gauge these different types of dignities because it can be a little overwhelming. There's 5 components here. So the 5 components are domicile or rulership, or the opposite of that, which is detriment, exaltation or fall, the triplicity, which is the elements and the element rulers, term or bounds, and then face or deacons. And then as I'm sure you've noticed a lot with astrology, there's lots of different arguments about most of these. So again, just to kind of give a little bit about my background, I'm primarily a traditional Hellenistic astrologer. So I use those traditional rulerships. I use the Egyptian terms or bounds and the Chaldean deacons, just so you know that. But if you want to go off and explore all the different ones, still kind of follow this hierarchy when you're using those other techniques. All right, so rulership or domicile. So this is if the planet is a ruler of that sign. So this is usually a concept that most people are familiar with. That being said, these are the traditional rulerships. And where do these come from? Why is it like this? So this comes from a chart called the Thema Mundi, which I don't have here. If you're more interested, you can go and you can Google that. But the Thema Mundi is the supposed birth chart of the world. The moment that the world was born, there's this kind of idealized chart for that. And that's what this rulership or domicile scheme comes out of. So it's definitely biased towards the northern hemisphere. So sorry, Australia. We're just gonna, pretend that this is the way it is. So in the summer months, when the sun is the brightest, when we have the most light, the days are the longest. That's where they put the luminaries. So that's why we have the moon in Cancer and the sun in Leo. And then opposite of that, during the winter, when the light is the dimmest, it's the coldest, that's where we have Saturn, that outer barrier, that, severe taskmaster. He's over in the winter months. And then we have the other planets kind of going out in a cascading effect along from the luminaries to Saturn. So we have Mercury here, and Mercury can only be one sign away from the sun. Then we have Venus over here, and Venus can only be two signs away from the sun. And then we have Mars, Jupiter, and then Saturn. Let's see what else. So modern rulership. So whereas the traditional rulership comes out of this thema mundi, this theoretical framework, modern rulership is more based on affinity. So this planet feels like this sign, so we're going to put that there, and that's how the rulerships came out for those transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. People thought that Neptune felt a lot like Pisces, or there was a lot of affinity there, so that's why that got put there. And same with Uranus and Aquarius and Pluto and Scorpio. We can talk more about this when it comes to the triplicities, but I have some hot takes. And if you go to the Wikipedia page about modern dignity, I hate that. It makes me so mad. It's like Eris in charge of Libra, like goddess of discord in charge of Libra. Like, I don't think so. Like, I don't know who said that. I disagree completely. Hot take over here. I'm saying it. But yeah, if you guys disagree, that's fine. We can talk about it. But I just feel like some of these modern rulerships make no sense. I can totally see the affinity of these outer planets, even if I don't use them as much. But some of these new ones, I'm just like, no. So that's why I teach it this way. But again, we can talk about it if there are strong disagreements later. So we have the rulership domicile scheme. And so then the opposite of that, so when a planet is in rulership, it has a lot of resources. It's in its home. You can think of it as being in its house. When you're in your house, you have all your stuff. You can do what you need to do. You're in your own bed. You awake refreshed. You're able to go to work the next day, and it's no problem. So if we think about detriment, it's the opposite of rulership. So the Saturn is thrust into the spotlight in the middle of the summer. We've got the sun and moon like put into a corner, and baby likes to shine. We have Mercury and Jupiter's domicile. So, when I was first learning, I kind of struggled with thinking of Mercury and Jupiter as opposites, but it does kind of make sense. So, like, Jupiter likes to just like be grand, not have to worry about the details. Like, these are the ideals. And Mercury's kind of like, well, how are we going to pay for that? Like, let's get some facts and figures. So that's an interesting opposition that I just think it's interesting. And then we have, Venus and Mars kind of switching domiciles. That kind of makes sense, like unity, cohesion versus separation and fighting. So one of my favorite astrologers when it comes to essential dignity is Charles Obert. You can go to his website. He's a really great astrologer. You can buy his books via PDF download, and they're very affordable. And he has this idea that I like really resonate with, and he says that planets that are in detriment are at odds with dominant cultural and political structure. And I love that. I think that's really interesting way, because if you're like, oh, my planets are in detriment, it doesn't have a lot of resources. Well, it doesn't have resources because it's kind of contrary to the dominant structure of the day. So when they're in rulership, planets have a lot of responsibility. They have a place in the world. This is what they're supposed to do. They have an allegiance to that sign and anything in that sign. Whereas planets that are in detriment, they aren't given that responsibility because they're outside of the structure. And one possible way of looking at it is that maybe they're working to change that structure. Maybe they have valid critiques of that structure. So just because a planet is in detriment, like, you don't have to feel bad about it. Really terrible people have had a lot of like exalted and really powerful planets. Like Jeffrey Dahmer is like a really great example. He had like 5 planets that were like full of dignity. So like, but he was not a good person. Personally, I have a lot of planets in detriment, and kind of reframing and thinking about, oh, those planets are outside of the structure, like really made sense for me, because I was like, yeah, sometimes I don't feel like I fit into mainstream normal society. I'm an acupuncturist, I'm an astrologer, you know, all these things are kind of a little outside of mainstream. And so it would make sense to see that reflected in my chart. So dignity is not a value judgment, it's just giving you resources about the quality and flavor of a planet so that you can work with that and understand what that planet needs to do. Yeah. So yeah, a planet that is in rulership could be a little blinded to some problems, whereas, you know, planets in detriment, I guess you would need to maybe watch out for is being a little embittered because you aren't given a place in or your specific role. But a lot of really successful people have overcome that because their planet in detriment gives them an outside perspective. So just something to keep in mind. And I did not put on these animations, so I probably couldn't do that if I tried, but it looks pretty. Okay, so planets in exaltation. So each planet has a sign that it just like loves to be in. You can think of it as like the honored guest. There's not a lot of responsibility that comes when you're an honored guest, so you can just kind of like do what you need to do there. So here we have the sun is exalted in Aries, the moon in Taurus. We have Venus in Pisces, Mars in Capricorn, Jupiter in Cancer, um, Mercury in Virgo, and Saturn in Libra. Mercury in Virgo is interesting because it's the only planet that has its exaltation also in a sign that it has rulership over. So that's like a double whammy right there. So Mercury loves being in Virgo. That makes sense. Virgo's like really into details and taking in information and being able to use it practically to create new systems. And so Mercury really thrives in that environment. I think it's interesting. So some of the planets are in exaltation, I think, because for the malefics in particular, because it kind of tempers their maybe more negative malefic attributes. So Mars can be like really fiery and kind of like, I'm doing this right now, I don't care what happens. And being in a Saturn ruled sign, Saturn's kind of like, well, let's fuck this like a little bit, just a little bit. Let's like give you some structure to like take the initiative. So that's a good match for that. And Libra is a good match for Saturn because Saturn can be like a little you know, not necessarily valuing the opinions of others. It's kind of like, this is what we're doing, like, take it or leave it, like, steamroll. And Libra is a little bit like, well, let's like take this passion, maybe apply it to people a little bit. So it can help kind of temper that maybe coldness and make it more personable. I just like love that Venus is exalted in Pisces. Pisces is such a dreamer. I feel like it's so romantical that like Venus is exalted in Pisces. I just think that's like a really beautiful placement. And then we have Jupiter in Cancer, like all that water and that you know, positivity towards your home and your family. Like I feel like that really gives, it kind of grounds some of Jupiter's aspirations a little bit to make them maybe more tangible. And then we have the moon in Taurus, given its stability. Moon is very changeable. Taurus is very like on the earthly plane. so it's a really good match. And then Sun in Aries, Sun likes to shine brightly, Aries likes to shine brightly, so that's a good match. I'm a little biased because my Sun is also in Aries. And so then, similar to the detriment home domicile, the fall is the opposite of the exaltation. So if you just remember one, then you'll be able to remember the other because it's the opposite. So kind of against, so yeah, just going to the opposite sign. One thing that I think is really interesting, so I've looked at the astrology for the upcoming decade, because I'm a crazy person. I believe it's in 2025, Saturn and Neptune are both moving into Aries and they're going to conjunct each other. And I'm like really interested. I'm interested to know what's going to happen then. Because we've had so much Saturn like in its full glory during 2020 and kind of 2021. So I think it's going to be a really interesting shift for it to move to its detriment. And I just like, I don't know, or its fall, not detriment. I'm just interested to see what's going to happen there. And with Neptune, I feel like is the opposite of Saturn in a lot of ways. Saturn's like structure, boundary, and Neptune's like, let's just make a cosmic mush of all of us together. And Saturn's not going to have a lot of power in this conjunction. So just keep 2025 in mind. Yeah, so I think a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. We just had 2020. Part of why it was so tough was because Jupiter was in Capricorn, the sign of its fall, and one of Jupiter's significations is the remediation of harm. So it had no ability to remediate the harm of the like Pluto, Capricorn, like Pluto, Saturn, Capricorn cluster that was going on. Let's see, Mercury and Pisces. Mercury wants like facts and figures. Pisces wants like dreams and whimsy. Venus in Virgo, you can't really shine and like be beautiful when you have to work hard. So I think that's why that's there. Yeah, so a lot of these make sense. So let's see what we got here. Okay.
So I have a quick question.
Sure.
So your main focus is on the personal planets, not so much the outer planets, just to be clear.
Yeah, so I'm primarily a traditional Hellenistic astrologer, so I use those the 7 traditional planets mostly. I do use Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, but they don't really fall into this dignity scheme. Those modern rulerships are based more on that affinity, as I said. So I do look at them in a chart, but I don't think of them when I'm thinking about dignity. I think of them more as like amplifiers or like structures that like if I'm looking at a personal person's chart, I look at those as like kind of structures that a person will have to deal with, or like ties that are trying to bring that person along, versus maybe a main activator in their life, unless of course they're conjunct or strongly angled a personal planet. And again, that's changing the actor in the chart because of that other influence. Does that make
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Great question. Any other questions? I'm kind of moving fast, kind of just going along. So please feel free to chime in with any questions. Any other questions so far about what we've been covering? Okay. All right. So moving on to triplicity. So I think triplicity is like a little tough for people to grasp. So I always get messed up because it's like triplicity, but we're talking about the elements and there's 4. So I don't know. I know there's like reasons why, but in my brain, I'm just like, no. So if triplicity like kind of confuses you, feel free to just like think of it as elemental rulers. That's kind of what I do. And so we have the different elements, and the way I like to think about this, so we've had all these other rulers. We've had home domicile, the sign ruler, we have exaltation and fall. So I like to think of triplicity as like if all of those if the planets are senators, triplicity is more like the committees that they're on. So this planet is doing all its thing, all its senator duties, and then it's like, oh, I'm also on like the fire sign committee, so I have to like keep an eye on them. Or I'm on the earth sign committee, so I need to like keep an eye on them. And then you can think of the ruler of that committee, like the person in charge of that committee that's like, all right, guys, we got to like take care of this. Changes based on if you're a day chart or a night chart. So just quick review, if you're born during the day, you're a day chart. If you're born at night, you're a night chart. And it's about the horizon. So your ascendant is the um, the horizon at the moment that you're born, the sign that's on the horizon. But if you look at your chart and the sun is above, kind of on those top houses, that's a day chart. Bottom night chart. If it's like near the ascendant, it can get a little tricky. So if any of you guys have that, we can look at it. So let's just look at fire. So the fire signs are Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, the air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, and then the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. So if we look at fire, we've got the day rulers, sun, obviously, and then we have the two planets that are in the day sect. So the planets that are in the day sect are Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn, and then the planets that are in the night sect, or part of that political party to keep this metaphor going, are Venus, Sun, and Mars. And then Mercury's versatile. It'll do whatever is around it. You know, that's the nature of Mercury. It's like all the things, none of the things, any direction I want to go. So depending on the sign, placement, all these other things, just know that Mercury is a wild card. Okay. So if you have a day chart, which honestly most people do because of C-sections, then and you have planets, a lot of planets that are in fire signs, you would look at the status of the sun, so the dignity of the sun, and based on that dignity of the sun, and then secondarily Jupiter, then you would be able to see if this person kind of has a lot of resources in their community to kind of help them. So triplicity, you people that have like really good triplicity rulers are people that like always have friends and family that are like can go to bat for them, like someone that's always plugged in, always knows what's going on, or like, you know, always gets a job because like their uncle knows someone or like their friend hooks them up. Those are people that have their triplicity rulers usually in a good, that have good essential dignity. This makes sense to you guys? Okay. If you don't say anything, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So when I use this in a chart, this is like, so the first two ones we talked about are the most important, and then this one and the other two are kind of like you add on. So I look at this if someone has like a lot of an element in their chart. Like say someone's chart is like all or like a lot of earth in them, then I would look at their triplicity rulers. If someone has a more balanced chart, then it's like not as big a deal. But like if someone is like really dominated by an element or two elements, or if they have like no element, so I kind of look at their elemental makeup, and that's kind of how personally I use triplicity. But other than that, I don't use it as much as the other ones. All right.
So Megan,
Yeah.
excuse me. So like, so a day it would be like from the morning to like 6 o'clock at night, or how did they determine?
Sunrise to sunset.
Okay.
So it's
Alright.
when the light is in the sky. So that will change pretty dramatically depending on the time of the year, where you are on the planet. But it's all about like sunrise to sunset. So if sunrise to sunset is like 2 hours, you only have 2 hours to be a day chart.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I could go on a tangent about how like everyone's a day chart because everyone gets a C-section. Most mothers get like a C-section between 9 to 5. So really interesting ramifications for astrology. That is another topic for another day. All right, so this is a lot, this chart to look at. Egyptian bounds terms, there's no way to like make this like pretty and easy to grasp. So I'm like a color person, so this is the best I could do. Most of the times when you look up Egyptian bounds or terms, you're just gonna see like a chart with numbers, and it's very confusing because people will be like, okay, the first 6 of Aries is ruled by Jupiter, but that's misleading because 6 is really 0 to 5. Because it's about the degree. So it's 0 to 1. And so then 29, it's like 29 to 29.59, all the way up to 30, because 30 is actually 0 and starts the next sign. So with this, you'll have a planet, say, let's see, in 9 Pisces. So the Egyptian bound or term, so kind of the filter for that planet is in Venus. There's a lot of different bounds or terms. It makes no sense. People don't know why this is set up this way, but it works. So we're gonna let the scholars figure it out and just use the practical application. But there are different ones that people use. I like this one. This is the one that I used, but if you find that you resonate with another one, totally go for it. Also really interesting, there's like people like will just say that the ends of a sign are like unlucky, and you'll notice that the ends of the signs are mostly ruled by the two malefics, Saturn or Uranus. But I think unlucky is a little bit of a misnomer. So astrologer Anne Ortley is really into the age of the planets. So she'll say like if your Mars is in 4 Aries, the age of that planet is 4 years old. So they react like a 4-year-old. And I think that the malefics are here because like a 29-year-old has more problems than a 4-year-old. Like a 29-year-old has way more responsibilities than a 4-year-old. So if your planet is 29 years old, they're able to kind of grasp more complexities and they're able to kind of do more. And when you're older, you have more responsibilities and kind of like more issues because you're old enough to handle that. So I think of that as a reframe instead of just like, oh, the ends of the zodiac signs are unlucky. No, it's just that more is asked of you because that is an older planet. Make implications about karma, lifetimes, all those different things if you want. I do sometimes, but there's no way to really know. But I like that perspective of just thinking of that planet being older instead of unlucky. Okay. So the bounder term will act as a helper or an obstacle for a planet trying to get its job done. So we're still using Aries. So say that you had Sun in Aries and the 28th degree Aries. So the bound of that is Saturn. So even though the Sun is in its exaltation and she'll love Aries, to be like, sure, look at me. Maybe you're like a little more reserved than the average Sun in Aries. And that's because you kind of have this filter of Saturn across you. It's a little bit of a hindrance. Whereas, say that you had, let's see, you had Venus in Virgo at 8 degrees. So Venus is in fall in Virgo, but it's in the Venus bounder term. So you actually have like a little extra help, a little like extra Venus juice to your Venus that is otherwise in fall. So it's kind of like a little helper or obstacle. And then the other thing to think of, so I don't think we've done this, maybe we have, but if we did this a long time ago, looking at the ruler of your chart. So generally people are just like, oh, my ascendant, whatever the ruler of that is. And the answer is yes, but. So say your ascendant is, let's see, 6 degrees Aquarius. So the ruler is Saturn, but also Mercury. So we got Mercury in there, and if you guys are interested, we could do a whole thing on the ruler of the chart because there's like a few different things. There's a few different techniques for that. But if your ascendant is in a bound or term that is different from the ruler of the chart as you generally know it, that other planet is kind of a co-ruler. So Saturn, yes, would be the dominant ruler of this chart, but like you need to pay attention to your Mercury as well. That makes sense to you guys? Yeah.
Totally.
Cool. And feel free to screenshot this if you want and use it, because I mean, if you find other tables helpful, totally use that. This type of chart works really well for my brain. I was going to bring you guys through setting up your astro.com, but some of their setup is like really weird, so we can still do that if you want. But some of their, yeah, it's just like some of it's weird, so you can figure it out this way always. Or should I go back? You guys seeing the screenshot? No? Okay. It will be up on YouTube. So then the last one, the fifth essential dignity, is deacons or faces. So this is when you divide the sign into thirds. So, just in thirds. And they are different rulers of this too. So, and again, there's also different deacons. So this is the Chaldean one. So as you can see, we've got, the different planets going around, just depending on the degree, it'll be which planet is the ruler of that deacon. It's really interesting, the history of the deacons. So astrologer Austin Coppock, it's a whole book about this, 36 faces, currently out of print because he's working on like an updated version, but once that's out, buy it immediately. He is like the astrologer on this topic. So a lot of like deacon stuff is used in the Picatrix if you're doing like astrological magic. And we think that in the past the deacons were used as like a different timing technique. Specifically in Egypt, there are different fixed stars that were associated with the deacons. Those have moved since then, but we think that that was used as like a timing technique just to keep track of time, like weeks or months or whatever. The other thing is that in different places, different minor gods and goddesses were responsible for that chunk of time. And there's different, the reason why it's also called faces is because there's a different image associated with each deacon, and they're all like really weird. It'll be like a woman with one leg with like a hand over her eye holding a bowl, like something weird like that. That is like the image. And so you can do a lot of different like magical stuff with that, like they do in the Picatrix and in other places. But we think that image is left over from a minor god or goddess that was associated with that time. So just interesting to think about that. Also, the deaconship ruler doesn't necessarily have a lot of power, but it's just like there to help if it can. So think of it as like your grandma that's like throwing you a couple bucks. Like she can't really like pay for your college education, but she like gives you a 20 when she can. So think of that planet in kind of that capacity. Like they'll like pick you up if you need a ride, but like they can't give you a car. Like they'll help where they can, but they're not like the main person we're looking for resources, like in the home domicile and exaltation. Let's see what else we got here. And then if you're interested in the like faces, let me see if I can just, when this stops, I will drop into the chat a link that gives you all those faces. You can look at them because I can't figure out how to do it right now while it's recording and I have this presentation up. All right, so that is it for Essential Dignity. Those are the things that you look at. Even though it's a little tricky, you'll like get the hang of it. And when you're looking at your chart or other people's charts, it's important to use this as a starting place just to kind of gauge the lay of the land, to kind of see what's going on before you start to, dive into the themes or the aspects or things like that, because the planets are the main actors in a chart, whether it's personal, mundane, electional. just kind of like see what you're working with. And it's important for electional astrology because if you want something like a relationship, you want like Venus and like having a lot of ability to help you do that. Or, if you want a job, you want to make sure that you don't have like Mars in your second house or something like that, or unless you want to be an entrepreneur, you just got to like know what you're working with so that you can create the best election that you want. We will talk about that when we do our unit on electional astrology. All right. Any questions about those?
So if you find yourself in a situation where there's not, like for instance, you just mentioned about relationships, and you find like maybe you have a difficult aspect, let's say Mars in the 7th house in Gemini or something like that. You can't really, it is what it is. So
yeah, you can do remediation though. So Mars in the 7th house could be like violence for sure. So you're like, okay, I'm worried that I'm going to attract a violent partner. Well, it also means like, more aggressive, active energy. So maybe you join like a running group. So that kind of like uses that Mars energy to like find someone in the 7th house. Specifically in Gemini, that would maybe be like verbal disagreements. So maybe you like join a debate team or like Toastmasters or something like that, kind of like use that energy in a different way, or use that energy kind of in a conscious way. So you're not just kind of reacting to that. So you can't really get rid of that Mars persona, but you can create an environment where that will express itself in different ways.
Okay, so you think that the energy could be redirected to other areas of your life, but not like, so in doing those things, it won't come out in that way, or it could come out in that way too,
Yeah. So I think of your chart as like, I don't think of it as like an absolute. I think of it as like a blueprint to like, again, kind of see what we're working with, and then kind of like consciously engage in it. So I think specifically with transits, you can kind of get dragged along with the transit, or you can be like, okay, how can I like surf this wave a little bit instead of being drawn under? So you can kind of be like, all right, so let's like engage with this martial energy. If I keep attracting martial people, maybe I need to like, also specifically in the 7th house, I think that a lot of planets there are things that we project onto other people. So people that have a lot of 7th house planets, I encourage them to kind of like reclaim that energy into themselves. So like people that have Saturn in the 7th house, a lot of the times they kind of shift authority and responsibility onto their partner, which is why there's that tendency to marry older people, because then that's like a paternal or a maternal figure. But if you start to take authority for yourself, then you can take that in and maybe get that energy more integrated into your person, and then you don't start seeing those more negative patterns coming up.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting conversation. Like, do we have free will versus not? I think we like to think we have more free will than we do. But like,
what? I don't know if you work with astrological relocation, where you can actually, of course, your chart is your chart, and that's going to be your prominent chart. But with relocation, you can at least move those planets to another house. It doesn't change the aspects, but it will at least kind of take that energy from that house and put it in another house.
So I have an aunt that is really into that, and every year for her birthday, she consults with an astrologer and makes sure that her solar return is like in the best place it can be. And that's great for people that have the resources to be able to do that, but not everyone can like go to a trip to like the best place for that to happen. But I think that's an example of like, we don't have as much free will as we think, or maybe we're more hampered by external forces than we think. Not to say that we don't have any free will, and that we can't try and engage more consciously, But I think that maybe if you have the ability to do that, you've got some like good aspects in your chart that allow you to do that. I think it can like almost drive you crazy trying to figure out these answers. So I think that kind of making friends with parts of your chart and engaging consciously is a good place to start. And then eventually you can work up to doing something like that, or you can do that. I'm not a relocation astrologer, but there's definitely good ones out there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I meant that in terms of like from an educational standpoint, and something that I would like to explore doing for, people. But yeah, sometimes you can go to a different location and feel different energies, and that's the only thing I was trying to bring out.
Yeah, no, totally. You can do that on astro.com too, like see where all of your meridians are. So if you're like planning a move, it's like your sun line goes through here. Maybe you want to move where your Saturn line is, or different things like that. And so you do engage, like, and it's kind of funny. Some of you're like, oh, why does my sun line have to go through this place? I don't want to move there, So you can kind of look at it like that. At least for me, my sun line was like, oh, I don't want to move there, but maybe some people have it in a great place, and then they can go. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No. Okay. Well, we're just going to do the upcoming space weather, and then we will look at everyone's charts.
Megan?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Sorry. So basically, you want to use the energy to work for you, not allow the energy to take control of you. So if you have you were just discussing the 7th house. So based on what planets you have in the 7th house, you want to kind of redirect that energy so it becomes a positive energy, not a negative energy.
Yeah, I think constructive is a better word than positive. So like, for example, Mars in the 2nd house, the stereotype or the way most people read that is like, oh, you're going to burn through money. That's like not a great placement. But a lot of people that have Mars in the 2nd house, they're really great. They can be really successful entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are naturally like risk takers. They'll like burn through money to like make money. So that's like a way to like use that seemingly negative placement and use it in a way that's positive or constructive. So I don't know if being an entrepreneur is like positive, because you could like be like, oh, this is so much work, but it's constructive. So I think in relationships, we want things to be positive. So that's why that's maybe a word for the 7th house, but like also maybe you have Saturn in the 6th house, so you've had a lot of health issues growing up, but you could maybe use that as like, okay, well, I'm going to slow down a little bit, which Saturn wants you to do, and kind of look for other ways that you can engage in this energy. And it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. So like, I have Saturn in my 6th house, and I had a lot of health problems when I was younger, but then I kind of got into the field of healing, and I've been like working on myself so that my body is better. So it's like you're kind of changing that energy and using it in a more conscious way. And you see that a lot with people in the 6th house. It's like they had health issues and then they kind of like went to the medical field. So they're like, not to say you're never going to have a health problem again, but you're engaging in that energy a little bit differently and then working on it with it in a more constructive way. Because you're going to have malefics somewhere in your chart. They don't go away. They're there. And I think also people don't want to hear that something is negative, whereas other people feel, or not negative, but like a challenge. But some people feel really validated. They're like, yeah, this has been a challenge. Like Mars in the 7th house, like, yes, I have had really challenging partners and this has been really frustrating for me. And it's like, yeah, I can see that in your chart. Let's think of a way that we can change that and bring this in a different direction so that you get what you want. And maybe,
right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I have that, Neptune conjunct the sun, the DC, like that whole stellium going on in that 7th house. And that has been so challenging because I know when you have that type of thing going on with your planets. I've researched so much and everything. It's like you want to find that perfect partner, and they have to check this box, that box, all these different boxes. And I've conversed with so many different people, about, because I took some astrology. So I've conversed with so many different people and everything like that. And it's just like, and
So
this is just,
my question to you would be, what is so important for you individually for having a perfect partner? Like, and you don't have to answer this right now. This is something to think about. Like, what do you get personally in your son? What part of your identity is validated from having this? And then kind of like working backwards.
right. So it's just, yeah. It's not it's not an easy it's not.
Yeah, the seventh house can be challenging when you have a lot of planets there because you tend to export those planets to other people in your life. So I definitely empathize with that for sure. But kind of taking that power back is part of, the journey of being human, being like a fully fledged adult is kind of understanding these patterns, reclaiming them, and then, becoming more whole so that your light can shine brighter. And then maybe attract that person because you've been doing the work to kind of take those pieces back to yourself.
Right. And which this past year, I have done like an enormous amount of growth in reference to that. So spirituality. So
yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else want to chime in? No? Okay. All right. So upcoming transits. We kind of have I feel like we have a lot going on this month. I don't know why. I just feel like there's a lot of changes happening. Like Mercury's like whipping through some signs. That's gonna go retrograde in September, I believe. Venus is like whipping through signs. Speaking of love, I was trying to find like a good love election for someone, and it's like tough until like April of next year because Venus is gonna go retrograde in December in Capricorn, and that is not what this person was looking for. We got a lot of retrograde going.
Sorry, it's gonna go retrograde in Capricorn?
Yes, in December. Mm-hmm.
Is it just gonna be for like a month, or is it gonna have a longer cycle?
So it's gonna slow down for a while, and then it's gonna be in Capricorn for like a long time. I don't have the details.
Really? I gotta look at that.
We talked about
I'm focused on 2024, where we get that next solar eclipse in April. The solar eclipse over the United States, like the one we had in 2017, which was like,
yeah,
ooh, that was a hard one for me. So yeah, and then that's the outer planets. I don't want to go into the outer planets, but okay. Pluto goes into the third house of Aquarius. So yeah. So
I have my eye on that ingress as well. So yeah, I look at the outer planets definitely on a societal level for sure, because I think they're like larger, signs and cycles. So looking, that's going to be a transition for sure. Yeah, I think that the middle of this decade is going to be very interesting. So buckle up. But yeah, I think that part of what we're going to be doing with this Venus Capricorn, I did talk about this a little bit at the beginning of the year when we're looking at the year overview. I think we're going to be revisiting a lot of the 2020 stuff because it's Capricorn. I don't know if it'll necessarily be I think it'll be a melancholy. I don't think it's going to be dramatic like it was in 2020, but I think we're really going to feel some losses, and I think it's going to be sad and not to be a downer, but I think that to use this energy consciously, maybe do a grieving ritual or something, just feel the sadness of what you lost. You can move forward. I think it's going to be a little melancholy, not to be a downer.
Megan, so excuse me. So all this all of this that's going on with all the fires and everything in the West, and then I really believe we're in climate change, and a lot of people really just don't like, um, it doesn't dawn on them, like, if you're not open to, astrology, these fires and everything, it contributed to the fact that Mars was in Leo, and so that exalted it. And so this, and when I'm talking to people, they're like, no, it's this, and I'm like, you guys, like, it's astrology. Look at what's going on with the planets. That's a large factor behind a lot of what's going on, and what's going on right now in the world with the government and all the changes, and we're going into the age of Aquarius, and all the what I'm talking about. We talked about this before, so it's like,
Yeah. So I think when Uranus went into Taurus, one of the indications that people look for when Uranus goes into Taurus is changes in the earth, like earthquakes, volcanoes, things like that. And so I think it's interesting. I thought when this went in, I thought this was going to affect the climate change conversation. And I think Saturn squaring Uranus, I don't know if you've noticed, there's been a lot of conflict about the climate change conversation because these really intense things are happening, like ocean on fire, and structures are still kind of resistant to acknowledging that. So I think it's going to still be a conversation kind of ongoing this year and next year. Hopefully there is a resolution, but I'm not surprised that there's been an uptick in climate issues with Uranus and Taurus, and it's always activated by Mars. I don't know if you remember last year when Mars was in Taurus, we got those pictures out of Oregon with like the red sky. But yes, Mars in a fire sign definitely usually brings fire, which makes sense. But yeah, we can talk about that more. Uranus is hitting retrograde in August. We've got some full moons coming up. I know this was in the past, this new moon in Cancer, but I don't know about you guys, but I really felt that one. I forgot that it's happening that day, and I was like, why am I so emotional? So I don't know if you guys felt that, but I feel like this new moon cycle has just been amplifying a lot of the emotions. So I'm really looking forward to a full moon in Aquarius, maybe drain some of those waters a little bit. So yeah, so I think that's really interesting. And we get 2 in Aquarius this month because sometimes that just happens. So then we've got a lot of ingresses, a lot of changing happening. Venus and Mercury are just whipping through these signs. So that's gonna be interesting. Oh yeah, and then Jupiter goes back into Aquarius on the 29th. We all enjoyed its time in Pisces. It will be back, but I think we're gonna feel that a little bit. I'm interested to see if that affects COVID stuff. So keep an eye on that. Because I think Jupiter's slowly tied into the lockdown story from 2020. So I don't know if this is gonna be Delta variant stuff. So it's just interesting. Just keep an eye out for that. And then
how far is that going to? This is going to go to maybe what, the 20th degree of Aquarius, Jupiter. It's not going to go way back in, because what I noticed is it's certainly not going to make a tight conjunction to Saturn.
No, it won't. It's just going to go, yeah, I'm not sure exactly the degree. It doesn't go far back, and it will come back to Pisces, but
right.
Yeah, I just think that it's been tied to the COVID story, so I'm just interested to see kind of what.
Right. I think you're right though about it's just you're gonna hear more things about it, but yeah. I hopefully it won't be. It's not going to be that intense because it's going to go back into. It's going to move forward and go back into the 4th house.
Yeah.
I mean, well, for me, it's the 4th house.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, maybe for other people. Yeah.
So Megan, so I've been reading up on that, and they're saying that this is they don't expect this whole COVID thing with this Delta variant and everything, they're saying till 2023.
To
Because
go
of
away till 2023?
that's what I've been reading. That's what they're because of Jupiter and
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's next year's gonna be really interesting. We're gonna still get that that Uranus Saturn thing is gonna keep going. Yeah, I would agree. I kind of think we're gonna go into lockdown again this winter. Like, I don't like the idea, but I'm just kind of like mentally preparing. I don't know. A lot of people here know my day job is I'm an acupuncturist, so I work with people that are not sick, but like who work in health stuff. So like I still have my mask on in that regard, and I think we're gonna go into lockdown again. But you know, I'm not to be a downer. I just think it's gonna happen. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm.
I feel it too because they've already started out in California and so different other places. So I feel that coming too.
Yeah, and I think this is maybe tying back into the Venus retrograde in Capricorn. So yeah, just like
I think it leaves right at the end of the year. Jupiter leaves Aquarius and goes back into Pisces.
Yeah, I have all these dates. Let me just check. Where is that? Yeah, I have like all the dates for the next decade. That's crazy. All right, let's see. Where are we here? There we go. All right. So let's see. We're in July. Okay. So, oh my gosh. Sorry, my computer is like, this is a lot. All right. Transits. Where is Jupiter? Okay. I think Saturn goes direct. Who goes direct? Jupiter goes direct on October 19th and 22 degrees Aquarius. Venus pre-shadow and 11 Capricorn on November 18th. Venus goes retrograde 26 Capricorn on 12/20. And then also on the 29th, Mercury enters its pre-shadow 24 Capricorn. So yeah, there's like a lot of Capricorn stuff at the end of the year. And then let's see. Where is Jupiter? I can't find the Jupiter Pisces right now, but I will find that.
The 29th of December.
29th.
Yeah, it's at the end of the year.
Oh, yep.
Pisces.
Yep, you're right. And then it goes into Aries on May 11th. Then does it go back into Pisces?
That's a really short stay in the house, I guess, because it doesn't have any retrogrades.
Yeah,
in that house.
It's a weird cycle this year. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And then on the 19th, January 19th, the nodes move into Taurus and Scorpio. So yeah, and then Venus goes direct at 11 Capricorn on January 30th. So yeah, it's in Capricorn for like a long time. It doesn't move into Aquarius until March 7th. So it's in Aquarius for a long time. I mean, Capricorn for a long time. So yeah, make peace with Capricorn, people. You know, Venus doesn't have to be. I kind of feel like even though it's melancholy, it's gonna be healing. You know, I think we're gonna like. It's gonna. That's why I think doing like a grief ritual or something like that to like acknowledge your feelings will be really helpful, because then I think it'll be like when you have to like clean out a wound before it starts to heal. That's like the vibe I get from this situation. And
well, when you kind of have an idea of what to expect. And I just feel like, hey, just prepare as much as you can and then don't focus on it anymore.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to project more into the situation.
I agree.
And also, Venus retrogrades come in cycles and whatever. And the last time it was in Capricorn was what, in like 2014, if I'm remembering correctly. So I always find it valuable to like think back of like what was going on the last time.
That's really
Yeah. And then so that's always helpful.
I moved to Oregon. Hopefully, I came back. But yeah, that's a really good point. Think back on what happened in 2014. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so that's the end here.
It doesn't always have to. I mean, Venus in Capricorn could just also be like, I could be wrong.
No,
I'm thinking more stability in that kind of area of your life, depending on which house it's in,
Yeah, depending on the house it's in, and it'll be retrograde first. So, I think reassess that house. And
if you don't have a lot of activity coming back and forth to that house, it could just pass over you to some degree.
I think we're all really familiar with that house at this point because we had it was hit so hard last year with the Capricorn cluster. Like we had Pluto, we had Saturn, we had all that stuff. So I feel like we're like Capricorn veterans. We're like, we got this.
That was it was fascinating to watch though. Very fascinating to see that come together.
Yeah. I think astrologers won a lot of people over to our side after that. But yeah, just to quickly wrap this up before we move on to applying this to our charts. So I just highlighted some transits that I thought was interesting. So because everything's going through Virgo, everything's going to hit the square the nodes. So even though the nodes are moving out of the signs of the Sagittarius, Gemini soon, I kind of feel like this is going to like punch it up a little bit. So anything going on in your houses, that's kind of been the story over the past year and a half. I think it's going to get activated kind of in August. So I don't think it'll be a surprise, but whatever has been going on for you, it's just going to kind of like, it's going to be like, hi, I'm still here. Like, it's going to kind of like rear its head. So just like, don't be surprised if that happens. And then let's see, what else? Oh yeah, so Sun conjunct Mercury opposed Saturn. I just would like, I don't know, whenever Mercury's like thrown into these mixed, I'm like just like, be careful with your work emails, or like, don't sign a contract that day. Like I just feel like Mercury is such a little trickster. So just like watch your words around the turn of the month, and then the 18th and 19th when the Mercury conjuncts Mars. So those are just ones I pulled out for you guys this month to just be aware of. And again, you can screenshot this if you want, or it will be up on YouTube. And that's it. Yeah, so if you guys want to throw me some money on Venmo just to like keep this going, I'd appreciate it. You don't have to. Sky Above Astrology. If you want to book a reading with me, you can contact me at megan@skyaboveastrology.com. The website was not up yet, but it will be up shortly. So for now, you can just email me or message me on Meetup. All right, I'm going to stop recording and then we can look at your charts. All right. Let's close that. All right. So who wants to share their chart? Anyone?
I can share mine.
Okay. Let's see what we got here. Do I have yours? What is your last name again?
My last name is Martin. I don't know if you have it. because I usually share my own, but I don't know if you want to plug it into whatever you have.
Yeah, I think I'll plug it in. All right. And how do you Martin?
Yeah.
And what is your birth date?
It's 12/13/77.
Time?
11:12 a.m.
And where?
in Wynwood, Pennsylvania. So WYNNE Wood.
Okay, hold on. And what was it again?
YNNEWOOD.
Wynwood. Select. Okay. And let's see. All right. There we go. All right, can you guys see this? Does this look correct for you?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes, so I use Astro Gold, and just like warning, if you guys use this, like 70% of the time, even if you put in the correct date, it defaults to the current time. So by now I'm like paranoid, but if you guys use it, just watch out for that. So this is, for those of you who don't know, this is my professional software that I use for Mac. It's the Solar Fire Mac version. I was gonna, like I said, I was gonna show you guys the astro.com, but it's like really weird. So we could still do that if you wanted, but I don't know. It was weird. So I don't know what, I think there's probably other better software out there. Like there's a ton of apps like Time Nomad and stuff like that. So I'm gonna investigate another option for next time. I just ran out of time this time. All right, so let's take a look at your chart. So let's start with your sun. What do you guys see? I'll start. It's in Sagittarius. Does the sun rule Sagittarius? No.
No.
Is it exalted in Sagittarius? No. But it does, the sun is happy. It's fine to be in Sagittarius because it's a triplicity ruler in fire. So we got some dignity there. I will just let you know that the term is Saturn, so it doesn't have a term or bound ruler, and the face is also Saturn. But that's not bad. The triplicity ruler, that's still pretty good. And then let's look at the moon. Let's see what we got here. Interesting. What's going on here? So the moon is in Aquarius, so it doesn't have a lot of rulership there, but that's okay. It's in the first house, so it's got some accidental dignity because any houses and angles are emphasized. So it is going to be seen whether it's ready or not. And then let's look at the ascendant. So the ascendant is really interesting. So the ruler of Aquarius in traditional astrology is Saturn. And I'm looking at its term, and that's also Saturn. So it's double Saturn there, which is good because that's its ruler and it's, helping itself. So Saturn is the ruler of your chart. Like double down on that. Let's see what else. We got Jupiter in its exaltation, so that's really great. So very good Jupiter there. And Jupiter is the ruler of like all these planets. So the fact that it has a lot of dignity and a lot of ability to kind of help all these guys out, that's really great. Let's see what else we got here. What about your Saturn? Interesting. So I'm like looking here. Let me share this. Let me share. So this is like a little cheat sheet over here, which is what you get with this software. And you have a lot of like really interesting, we didn't talk about this, mutual reception, but you've got it. So you've got a lot of like face mutual reception. I don't know how, it's like you just got a lot of planets helping each other behind the scenes. So that's interesting because it's like on its face, it would look like maybe you don't have a lot of essential dignity, but kind of behind the scenes, they're all helping each other. They're like, I know you don't have this, but I got this, like I'll help you out. And especially your Mercury and your Saturn, there's Mercury, like they are really helping each other out. So yeah, that's really interesting. So how I would interpret that is like, you know, things might not look like they're going to work out initially, but like things find a way of moving forward. Do you resonate with that at all?
Yeah, totally. As I've gotten older, I've I've recognized more and more just how important that Saturn Mercury connection is in my chart.
Yeah, I feel like Mercury really having that help is like really good, because I feel like especially in today's society, Mercury is kind of like in charge of a lot of stuff that we use every day. So yeah, I feel like Mercury is an underdog in terms of planets that we look at. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Anything else anyone wants to say or chime in about this? No? Okay. Let's see, does anyone else want to look at their chart? Andrea, you do?
I'd love it. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Okay. Is someone going to say something? All right. So let's take a look here. So we got Sun in Gemini. Where's your moon? Moon in Sagittarius. Interesting. And then let's look at your ascendant. So your ascendant, oh, that's good. So your ascendant is ruled by Venus, and it's also in the term of Venus. So where's your Venus? Down here. So Venus is in its own term and face, and it likes being in Cancer. It's not like you are in my chart. Yeah, so that's pretty good. So your Venus is doing a lot of work supporting people here. It's kind of it's working with your ascendant. It's working to kind of help kind of steer the ship, so to speak. Let's see. Your sun is in its own face. And then let's see, where's your Mercury? Oh yeah, Mercury. Your Mercury is very happy. So your Mercury is also carrying a lot of weight here. I think your Mercury has like the most, yeah, so it's in its own ruler, it's in its own triplicity. Yeah, Mercury is like, I'd say your Mercury and Venus are like supporting your chart. And that's interesting. And your Mercury is in Kazimi. That's not something we're talking about. I'm just like getting distracted over here. So yeah. Let's see. So yeah, your Mercury is very strong. and it has the resources to kind of help all these other planets here, which might not necessarily have their own dignity. So this is kind of what we're talking about with accidental dignity, where it's like planets kind of just like get help or get resources based on kind of what's around them. So your Mercury and Venus are helping everyone out. Jupiter. Oh yeah, it's here. Interesting. So do you feel like that's accurate? Do you feel like strongly identified with your Mercury?
I know very little still, so I do. I feel like Mercury definitely supports everything I try to do, career-wise and all. But you said that Mercury and Venus support my chart?
Yeah.
So just a reminder, what does Venus do?
Yeah, Venus.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So you're a night chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Venus is your most positive planet in your chart. So you're part of the night political party. So the planets that are kind of amplified by that are your moon, Mercury, and Mars.
Okay.
And so Venus is just like going to do everything it can to like help you, give you resources. So maybe it's like interpersonal relationships, or
Okay.
I'm really into this like Venus kick right now, because I feel like Venus is like beauty, but I feel like that gets so belittled because like we live in patriarchy, and they're like, oh, that's just like a woman's thing. But I've lately been feeling like beauty is like necessary for humans. Like we need beauty around us. Like we need a beautiful environment. Like we need like to live a beautiful life and kind of like stop and appreciate that. And so you also have that in your third house. So that atmosphere around you, like create a good atmosphere. And those around you are going to like bring you luck or bring you like positive things. So it's almost like you'll absorb it like a positive miasma and generate it as well. So people are probably really attracted to you. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great. Anyone else have anything they want to comment on Andrea's chart?
Can we see that the chart that you
Oh,
showed?
yeah. Sure. Sorry. Share. So yeah, and this is also kind of what I mean about like these numbers are helpful, but as you kind of like start doing more charts, like these are training wheels. You want to look at the flavor. So her Venus here only shows like a +3, whereas I would say it's more important in her chart, given all those other things we mentioned. But this is like a quick and dirty way to just like assess the situation. And so like, yeah, here, so yeah, again, just like take this kind of with a grain of salt. But then ascendant, I mostly use this to like look at the ascendant home to do calculations. You can just like look and it's right there. So you can see like the term that things are in, the face, and then this is helpful to be like, oh yeah, like look at all that going on, but you can just kind of like, there's just one component of assessing the strengths and weaknesses. Also, I like love looking at this for people. Day of Venus, so Friday. So just like, I think that means something as well. All right. Anything else you wanted to look at? No? Does anyone else want to share their chart? No. Okay. Any general questions or things that you wanted clarification on? Oh, hey, Deanna.
Hi. I'm sorry for my late arrival. I just saw the email and forgot I had signed up for this. So cool that you're hosting this. Thank you for doing it.
well, we recorded the like lesson, so I'll be posting that on YouTube and I'll send that out to everyone. We went over Essential Dignities today, and like, we're prepping for learning about Electional Astrology because I want everyone to be able to pick their best dates for stuff, so they have an edge over all those other applicants.
I've been diving into electional astrology a lot, actually, which is ironic.
Oh, I feel like we need to know. So I'm actually really excited. Do you guys know who Nina Griffin is?
Yeah.
She's this like magical electional person. She's like really good. And she's teaching this class, and I'm going to take it in the fall, starting in October. And I'm really excited. Make so many talismans. So yeah. Yeah, I think electional astrology is like really important. Just, I mean, again, not to be like obsessive, but like if you're gonna start something, you might as well like get a little edge, you know?
Yeah, I've tried to find my own elections before I started taking formal astrology classes. And now looking back at those charts, I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? I put some planets in such weak positions.
Yeah, it's like, why did I put Mars there? Come on. Yeah.
Only thinking about the moon and like, I don't know, Neptune, because it was kind of a Neptunian endeavor, but
I totally get it. Yeah, I look back on some and I'm like, no wonder that didn't work out. But you gotta learn, right? Gotta start somewhere.
Well, I would love to share my chart if I didn't want to be like, how do
you'll give me the info and I'm gonna share it here. So let me just pull it up.
to continue the rest of the information.
Okay. Oh, are you putting it in the chat?
Oh, is there a different place to send it? Sorry.
Oh no, you can just tell me.
Oh, okay. So it's January 11th, 1993.
Hold on, I'm gonna January 11th, 1993.
Yes.
Okay, and the time?
9:14 p.m.
Ooh, love getting night charts. And where?
Malden, Massachusetts. Love being a night chart. No, I think I'm too biased to delineate my own chart, honestly.
Yeah, I feel that. All right. All right. Does this look correct?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right.
What house system is this?
This is whole sign houses.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I do a lot of traditional and Hellenistic astrology. So I do whole sign houses. Are you a Placidus person?
Well, I typically look at Placidus, in which case Venus is in the 6th, which obviously I would prefer Venus in the 7th. But my studies do keep kind of leaning toward like feeling like I probably should kind of go with traditional and stick to it. But I'm not, yeah.
Yeah, I did Placidus for many years. I think people like switch over to whole sign if their planets are better. So like it took my Venus and Mercury out of my 12th house and put it in my 11th, and I was like, yeah, this is the house system for me. But you know, I also think it works better. Not just like bias.
In whole sign, my moon is in the 1st house instead of the 12th as well, which is such obviously a much more favorable position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying this probably is the one for you. All right, let's take a look what we got here. So we did Essential Dignities today, so your chart's actually really great. So just right off the bat, we are seeing an exalted Venus in the 7th house. So that's pretty good. Got Sun in Capricorn, got a lot of Capricorn going on. And then let's see. And then we have Mars in Cancer. So we were talking about how that would be in its fall, and not to be like, part of what we talked about today, to kind of reframe that a little bit, is how a lot of planets that are in detriment in fall are maybe, you can think of them as outside of, proper society. So like when it's in its rulership or exaltation, it has a lot of responsibility and place in society, a lot of resources, but it's okay if you're outside of society, because then, you know, you have more, like you're going to change it. And I also have a lot of planets in detriment and fall, so it's not a value judgment, but it is good to know that maybe if you're a little bit outside, then you can kind of see what's going on a little bit better. All right, let's look at your sheets here. Yeah, your Venus is really good. So let's see, ascendant. So that is Mercury. Interesting. Okay. So where is your, oh, here we go. So your Mercury would be the ruler of your chart because your ascendant's in Virgo, but the term or phase of that is Jupiter. So Jupiter is kind of trying to help out Mercury. And that's an interesting combination because Mercury might not want Jupiter's help, but Jupiter's like, I'm gonna help you, and maybe kind of like amplify things. And Mercury is maybe like we're trying to keep things even keeled a little bit. So that's interesting that you kind of got that Jupiter influence as the ruler of your chart. So that's just kind of probably like an amplifier. So maybe things are being amplified and you're like, why is this happening?
What does term mean? I haven't heard that.
Yeah, it's like a term or bound, like, you know, like the Egyptian terms.
Huh.
We went over that, so definitely watch the video. It's part of Essential Dignity. So it's like these like little lots. The sign is broken up into these different pieces, and it's interesting with your everyone's ascendant. It's in a term or a bound, and that is like a filter for the ruler of your chart. So it's a filter for all the planets, but it's more important with the ascendant because that's the ruler of your chart. So that's a planet of great importance. So we were looked at a few other people's and theirs was the same. Mine's also the same. So I have my ascendant in like, I think it's like 3 Gemini. I should know this. But the term around it is also Mercury. So it's like doubling down on that Mercury influence. But yours, this is a great learning experience. Thank you for sharing. Your filter is through Jupiter. And usually that's like a great thing. That would be amazing. But I just kind of feel like Mercury is probably like, oh, this like plucky sidekick and he's trying to help and I don't know what he's doing. So that's interesting because that's like an interesting chart signature for you. Not everybody has that. So do you feel like that happens at all? Like things get randomly amplified?
Yeah, that resonates really well. So one of the things that like I kind of feel about my chart is that the chart shape is I think it's called locomotive, and I sort of lead with that midheaven in Gemini, but I have so much like Capricorn and Virgo that I feel like when people get to know me, they're like surprised at how like I'm very earthy and really not very Gemini, not airy at all, honestly. In my personality, that's kind of one of the energies that I have more trouble relating to when it shows up like heavily in others' charts, for example. But in terms of the Jupiter, it makes so much sense because all of my like ambitions are very sort of centered around, well, there's a lot of like spiritual topics, but also I do things in a very Capricorn and Virgo kind of way. However, there's this sense of like, I'm very over the top. I don't know how to describe it. Like I do random things like go on like a 4-month thrifting road trip like during the pandemic, and people are just like, why do you do these things? And like I do feel like that Jupiter is kind of like, it just adds this like, well,
I can definitely see that for sure. Because it's like, well, we're gonna do this now. And that's part of this, because you do kind of have this like air thing going on. Your Saturn is in air. You've got the MC in air. Your south node is there, so I understand why you kind of like want to leave that energy behind. But also you kind of got Venus over here being like, do it, it's fine, I got you. So you know, I think that it's good for people with a lot of Capricorn to do stuff like that. So I'm happy to hear that.
It all really resonated. Thank you. And as far as the air thing too, I also have a yod where Saturn is the apex. And I don't know. Yeah, the Saturn
between
I
Mars
feel my placements very strongly, as everyone does, I'm sure.
Is it Mars and Jupiter have point to it?
I would have to pull up my check.
Or is it, oh, is it the moon?
Oh, it's the moon.
I want to say it's Mars midheaven set. No, that wouldn't be right. Never mind. It might be like
the ascendant.
The ascendant. Oh, okay.
I don't know. I would have to pull up the chart, and that is also in Placidus. So I don't know if do configurations change when you change house systems. Okay.
All the configurations are the same. It's just which house they fall in because it's a whole sign.
Okay.
But yeah, please come back and share with us. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I just did a chart reading for someone and it was so interesting. She had like all these planets in Sag in the first house, and then like everything else was in like these really heavy, intense signs. So I was like, you come off way different than you are. And she was like, yes. And it's just like really funny how that happens for some people. It's like, this is how you see me, but it's like, this is not how I am. And especially with the night chart, you tend to kind of keep things like closer to the chest a little bit. So you're like, yeah, believe what you want. That's not what's happening.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let's see, does anybody else have anything they want to chime in about this or look at?
Megan.
Yeah?
Can we look at my chat?
Sure, of course. And what's your last name again? I know I have you in here.
Jansen.
Oh, yeah, there you are. Perfect. Okay. Let's take a look. Got like a million things open here. Hold on, let me just minimize some of these. Okay, here we go. All right, let's take a look here. So, we got Sun in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, right? Yeah. Okay. And we've got Moon there as well. So those don't have a ton of dignity there, and the Moon is actually in its fall there. But as we talked about, we're framing that. So do you feel like you're someone that tends to be kind of more outside of the system and tends to be someone that kind of feels more of a desire to change it than have a responsibility to the system?
As far as like following rules, you mean?
I'm not saying you're like a criminal, but just like, you know, you're what you tend to like maybe is like a little bit different than maybe like more of like alternative than mainstream. That's like a better way of saying it.
I kind of like do my own thing, and I kind of like don't I don't believe everything I hear. I go and research things for myself and get my own perspective on things. And
yeah, you don't buy the mainstream narrative. So you're like,
no, I don't. No, I don't. Like, I believe like 1% of what I hear.
Yeah, so that would be like a great example of, you know, planets being in detriment or fall, or maybe just like a little bit outside of the system and kind of like looking to change it maybe, or maybe do your own thing because you're Scorpio. So you're like, yeah, I'm over here.
And you see how the Neptune is there too, and then it's like right up on the DC, so that's like, remember what I was saying earlier? So that's a tough situation right there.
I definitely understand that. what I think is interesting, so I looked at your ascendant, so you've got the Venus here, but your term is Saturn. So Saturn kind of is maybe a co-partner with Venus for ruling your chart. I think that's interesting to keep in mind because you're coming up on a Saturn return in the next few years. Your second one, right?
I think so, yes.
So I think that people that have kind of Saturn as co-ruler, usually Saturn is like that silent partner in your life. So usually Saturn returns are really important. So you mentioned that you've kind of been going through a lot of changes lately, and I think that's probably prepping you for this kind of new transformation that's going to be happening with your second Saturn return.
And I also have a nodal return coming up in the fall, don't I?
So you're in your nodes right now because they're in Gemini and
Sagittarius.
So yeah, you've been having your nodal return.
Okay.
You're in the middle of it right now.
Okay. I find that I can relate a lot to my Mercury and Sag. That is like a big factor for me. Like I know Mercury and Sag is very blunt, outspoken, philosophical, and a lot of times I feel that's so like expanded and exalted with me. Sometimes I have to take a step back and say, wait a minute now.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's good you kind of have like a good mix of elements in here, and that's probably one of your more significant fire elements. So it's good to have that to kind of keep in balance with the water and the fire and the air kind of going on. So it's good to have that balance.
Because I mean, sometimes I can like throughout this whole year, 18 months that has gone by, I just noticed that I've done a lot of growing spiritually and, gone to kind of did a deep dive within myself and just recognized a lot of different things and like, um, try to heal certain things from the past and things like that and just trying to make like, uh, trying to figure out where I'm going moving forward, what I want to do career-wise, just trying to
and that makes
figure.
sense because you're having your nodal return in the second and eighth house. That's finances, yours and other people's, maybe moving towards being more financially independent. So that would make sense for having nodal return along this axis. Again, setting yourself up for your second Saturn return.
Yeah, Saturn returns and they're no joke.
Yes. So I don't remember when Saturn's moving into Pisces. I can find out for you, but yeah, I think that'll probably be a big turning point for you, and that's definitely happening in the next few years.
But some people some people when they have a Saturn return, it's so like catastrophic. Like certain things happen, and when you hear about different people and what they've gone through and life-changing forces that take place, and sometimes it can be very scary.
Yeah, so I think that the first one is about kind of becoming an adult. So kind of dealing with like your childhood. Are you into that, or do you kind of need to make some changes? And then I think the second Saturn return is more like reaping what you sow. So it's like, how have you used the last 30 years? Have you been working to try and implement some changes? And those patterns are going to become heightened. Saturn can be a scary taskmaster, but he also gives rewards for hard work. So it kind of looks at what you've done over the last 30 years, and it's kind of letting you know how you're doing. And if you need to make some changes, maybe it's a wake-up call, maybe it's like you're doing a great job, let's keep going. I don't think it has to be scary and cataclysmic, but you know, some people don't get the message. So
does it, okay, so excuse me, so does it basically affect primarily the house in which it falls in? So it's in Pisces. So
11th house for you.
right, so whatever rule, the 11th house is like friends and groups and different things like that.
The audiences, excuse me. Yeah, it could be how you interact with the public. It could be if you like have an audience. It could be them. It could be political. It could be like your coworkers. Not like coworkers. Like if you went to like an event and all the people in your field were there. You know, it could be all those different types of things.
Okay.
It's a more social house for sure.
Okay. So it kind of pulls you out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And is like pushing you to make certain changes.
The Saturn return does, but I mean, maybe the 11th house is your comfort zone. Probably not with Saturn there, but like, you know, some depending on what's going on in that house. I wouldn't say it's necessarily pulling you out of your comfort zone, but for you in particular, it could be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we've got just a few minutes left here. So anything else you guys want to say or talk about or think about before we call it a day? I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do next time, but it is going to bring us, it's going to be some other type of building block for the electional astrology. So usually I let you guys choose, but not this time. Although if you have any suggestions, I can make a note of it and work it in at some point.
No, I've really appreciated going over this essential dignity stuff because it's stuff that I've like sort of like knew, but it was nice to have it like all put together.
Yeah.
And now I have a better understanding of that essential dignity chart in solar fire.
Good. Yeah, I do use solar fire.
I do.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna try and find a better free software because yeah, for one, I was like so mad at. I was like, I hate this. I was like, why are you making this so difficult? So and then yeah, and Deanna, I said this before, but I just wanna do not go into the Wikipedia because I like disagree with their modern dignity chart. I was like, I want to try and correct this. So use other sources. Like watch my video. Just don't go to that Wikipedia page. But yeah, great. Well, I will put this up on my YouTube. I will send it out to everyone. Any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out to me. And I hope to see you guys next time.
How was your visit with your sister?
Oh, it's good. Oh my gosh, that's why I had to cancel last month. My sister came home for the first time since before the pandemic, and it was amazing. I had, as much as I love you guys, I had zero regrets. I was like, oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I was like, oh, I know. She's the baby. So, of course, we all like love her so much. She's like living in New York, like living her best
Oh, wow.
life,
Awesome.
and could like, you know, grace us with her presence. So I was like, okay. But yeah, she just got a new kitten, so she's like never gonna come home again. It's all I get are like adorable kitten pictures from her now. But yeah, it was fun, and it happened to be the solstice, so I just felt like it was so good to like be with my sisters on the solstice. So I felt like very rejuvenated. So yeah, it was really great. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. So I have a question. These eclipses are gonna this last eclipse is gonna carry us out through the end of the year.
Yeah. So I think the eclipse, even though the nodes are in Saturn, or not Saturn, Sagittarius and Gemini, the actual eclipse is going to be in Taurus or Scorpio, I think. I need to look at the details exactly, but it's going to be giving us a preview, I think, what the next eclipse cycle is going to be about. Oftentimes when you get eclipses that are kind of in between, they kind of meld the significations over to the next one. So
Okay.
yeah, I think this will be a preview.
Thank you. Oh, and your hair looks really pretty, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got the pink done. So yeah, I was like, it's summer. I'm going for it.
It's the end because I've seen quite a few people doing that.
Oh, well, I'm glad I'm on trend. It matches my background.
Well, you're an Aries. You're an Aries, so.
Yeah. I gotta have the fire hair over here. Well, thank you again. This was really lovely. I will let you guys know about the video, and I will see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks, Megan.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Megan. Bye-bye.